I still remember the sound of the television turning off. It was such a small sound, but it felt like someone had pulled the floor from beneath my feet. I was sitting on the old sofa in the living room, the same sofa my husband and I bought 25 years ago. I was watching the evening news. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that usually brings peace, but that day it felt heavy. My son-in-law walked in. He did not greet me. He did not smile. He did not even look at me. He just reached for the remote, switched off the TV, and said in a low voice, "Please get out. I need this space." At first, I thought maybe he meant something else. Maybe he wanted to clean the room. Maybe he wanted to take a phone call. Maybe he was in a bad mood. But then he repeated it. I said, "Get out." He did not shout. There was no anger. It was the calmness in his voice that hurt the most, as if asking me to step outside my own place was something normal, as if my presence was a burden he had carried for too long. I looked at him. He did not look back. And in that moment, I felt something I had not felt even during the hardest years of my life. I felt unwanted. I did not argue. I did not ask why. I did not cry. I just stood up, folded the little blanket on my lap, and walked out of the room quietly. But what he did not know, what even my own daughter did not know, was that I had heard every whispered conversation for months, every sigh, every complaint about me being around too much, every suggestion that maybe I should go stay with someone else. I had felt the change long before that moment. But still, when he asked me to leave that room, something inside me shifted, something I had been holding together for the sake of my daughter, for the sake of peace. I went to my small bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking, but my face was calm. And the next morning, a man I had never seen before showed up at our door. His presence alone changed everything I knew about my family. That was the day a long-hidden truth surfaced, a truth that forced me to look at my life, my daughter, and even myself differently. This is the story of what happened before that day, on that day, and after. I still remember the sound of the television turning off. It was such a small sound, but it felt like someone had pulled the floor from beneath my feet. I was sitting on the old sofa in the living room, the same sofa my husband and I bought 25 years ago. I was watching the evening news. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that usually brings peace, but that day it felt heavy. My son-in-law walked in. He did not greet me. He did not smile. He did not even look at me. He just reached for the remote, switched off the TV, and said in a low voice, "Please get out. I need this space." At first, I thought maybe he meant something else. Maybe he wanted to clean the room. Maybe he wanted to take a phone call. Maybe he was in a bad mood. But then he repeated it. I said, "Get out." He did not shout. There was no anger. It was the calmness in his voice that hurt the most, as if asking me to step outside my own place was something normal, as if my presence was a burden he had carried for too long. I looked at him. He did not look back. And in that moment, I felt something I had not felt even during the hardest years of my life. I felt unwanted. I did not argue. I did not ask why. I did not cry. I just stood up, folded the little blanket on my lap, and walked out of the room quietly. But what he did not know, what even my own daughter did not know, was that I had heard every whispered conversation for months, every sigh, every complaint about me being around too much, every suggestion that maybe I should go stay with someone else. I had felt the change long before that moment. But still, when he asked me to leave that room, something inside me shifted. Something I had been holding together for the sake of my daughter, for the sake of peace. I went to my small bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking, but my face was calm. And the next morning, a man I had never seen before showed up at our door. His presence alone changed everything I knew about my family. That was the day a long-hidden truth surfaced, a truth that forced me to look at my life, my daughter, and even myself differently. This is the story of what happened before that day, on that day, and after. I still remember the sound of the television turning off. It was such a small sound, but it felt like someone had pulled the floor from beneath my feet. I was sitting on the old sofa in the living room, the same sofa my husband and I bought 25 years ago. I was watching the evening news. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that usually brings peace, but that day, it felt heavy. My son-in-law walked in. He did not greet me. He did not smile. He did not even look at me. He just reached for the remote, switched off the TV, and said in a low voice, "Please get out. I need this space." At first, I thought maybe he meant something else. Maybe he wanted to clean the room. Maybe he wanted to take a phone call. Maybe he was in a bad mood. But then he repeated it. I said, "Get out." He did not shout. There was no anger. It was the calmness in his voice that hurt the most, as if asking me to step outside my own place was something normal, as if my presence was a burden he had carried for too long. I looked at him. He did not look back. And in that moment, I felt something I had not felt even during the hardest years of my life. I felt unwanted. I did not argue. I did not ask why. I did not cry. I just stood up, folded the little blanket on my lap, and walked out of the room quietly. But what he did not know, what even my own daughter did not know, was that I had heard every whispered conversation for months, every sigh, every complaint about me being around too much, every suggestion that maybe I should go stay with someone else. I had felt the change long before that moment. But still, when he asked me to leave that room, something inside me shifted, something I had been holding together for the sake of my daughter, for the sake of peace. I went to my small bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking, but my face was calm. And the next morning, a man I had never seen before showed up at our door. His presence alone changed everything I knew about my family. That was the day a long-hidden truth surfaced, a truth that forced me to look at my life, my daughter, and even myself differently. This is the story of what happened before that day, on that day, and after. The knock on the door came early, so early that the morning light had not fully settled into the hallway yet. I was still sitting on the side of my bed, my hands folded together, replaying the events of the previous night again and again. I was not angry, just tired, a kind of tiredness that rested not in the body, but somewhere deeper. When the knock echoed again, I stood up slowly. I wasn't expecting anyone. Nobody came to visit me these days. I made sure of that. I did not want visitors to disturb Emily or Ryan. I opened my bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. Ryan was standing near the entrance, tying his shoelaces. Emily was in the kitchen, stirring something in a pot. They both heard the knock but didn't react, almost as if they knew someone was coming, or as if they didn't think the visitor could possibly be for me. I walked quietly toward the living room. Ryan opened the door before I reached it. A man stood there, a man I had never seen before. He was in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. His clothes were clean but simple. His hair was combed back neatly.
He held a brown envelope in one hand and a small notebook in the other. He looked up when he saw me. "Mrs. Sarah?" he asked softly. I stopped. Ryan turned to look at me too, surprise flickering across his face for the first time in weeks. "Yes," I said. The man nodded gently. "I'm sorry for coming so early. I know this is unexpected, but I need a moment of your time." Emily walked over from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Who is this?" she asked, glancing between me and the stranger. The man held the envelope a little closer to his chest. "My name is Thomas. I work for the legal office that managed Mr. Daniel's estate." Daniel, my husband. Hearing his name after so many months sent a quiet wave of warmth and pain through me. Even after all this time, his name still felt like home. Emily frowned. "We already settled everything after Dad passed. Why are you here now?" Thomas hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "There are a few matters that were not fully disclosed at that time." I felt my breath slow. Ryan crossed his arms. "What kind of matters?" The man looked directly at me. Matters meant only for Mrs. Sarah. My hands instinctively clasped together. I had no idea what he was talking about. Daniel and I were open about everything, or at least I believed we were. Ryan stepped aside reluctantly, allowing Thomas to enter. I noticed how Emily's eyes shifted, first to me, then to Ryan, then back to Thomas. She looked nervous, uncertain, as if she already feared what this visit could mean. We all moved to the living room, the same living room where the night before Ryan had looked into my eyes and asked me to leave. I sat on the sofa. Thomas sat across from me. Emily sat at the edge of a chair. Ryan stayed standing, arms crossed, shoulders stiff. Thomas placed the envelope on the table. "There is no easy way to begin," he said softly, "but your husband left instructions for us to deliver certain documents to you 1 year after his passing." 1 year? Daniel had passed away 15 months ago. I whispered, "Why did you wait?" Thomas's eyes softened. "We tried to contact you 3 times during the last 6 months." My heart tightened. I didn't receive anything. He glanced briefly at Emily and Ryan. "We sent letters to this address." Silence filled the room. Emily shifted uncomfortably. Ryan looked away. My fingers trembled slightly. I had not received any letters, not one. Thomas continued carefully, perhaps sensing the shift in the air. "Your husband left something behind for you, something he wanted you to have when the time was right, when he believed you would need it." I swallowed. "What is it?" Thomas opened the envelope slowly. He pulled out a stack of papers, neatly arranged, stamped, and sealed, and on top of them, a small handwritten letter. The handwriting looked familiar, old, gentle, like the letters Daniel used to write me when we were younger. My eyes blurred. Thomas placed the letter in my hands. I stared at it quietly. My husband's name on the envelope, my name written beside it. My fingers touched the paper, and for a moment it felt as if he was near me again, as if his warmth was still in the room. But before I could open it, Ryan stepped forward. "What exactly is all this?" he demanded. Thomas remained calm. "It is personal, and it is for Mrs. Sarah alone." Ryan's jaw tightened. "She lives in our home. If something affects her, it affects all of us." I lowered the letter into my lap. "Ryan," I said softly, "please, let me hear him." He stared at me, his face stubborn, but he said nothing more. Thomas cleared his throat. "Before you open the letter, I need to explain one thing. Your husband left you more than emotional words. He left you assets that were never included in the earlier estate documentation." "Assets?" Emily whispered. Thomas nodded. "Yes, significant ones." Ryan uncrossed his arms. His entire posture changed. "What kind of assets?" he asked quickly. Thomas's expression shifted slightly. He had seen this reaction before, many times, in many families. But he answered calmly. 2 properties, several investment accounts, and a secure trust fund." Emily gasped. Ryan's eyes widened. I stayed still, not because I wasn't shocked, but because my mind could not process the idea that Daniel had kept such things hidden from me. He had never been secretive. Never. Unless he had a reason. Thomas added gently, He left instructions explaining why he kept these matters private and why he chose this timing. I felt a quiet ache in my chest. Daniel always protected me, even when I told him not to worry, even when I said I was strong enough. Maybe this was another way he tried to protect me. Emily leaned forward. Why would Dad hide something like this? Thomas looked at her with understanding. Sometimes people keep things hidden because they fear burdening their loved ones. Sometimes they wait for the moment they believe the truth will matter most. Ryan's voice grew sharper. And what does she get now? What are you giving her? The tone, that tone again, the same tone he used the night before, the same tone he had used for months. I gently placed a hand on the envelope. That's enough, Ryan, I said, quietly but firmly. It was the first time I had spoken to him with any sense of authority. He looked at me surprised. Thomas opened the folder. These papers show ownership transfers, account statements, and trust authorization. Your husband ensured all legal processes were handled long before his passing. Emily whispered, Mom, does this mean you're wealthy? I shook my head slowly. I don't know. I don't understand any of this yet. Thomas offered a small, reassuring smile. I will explain everything, but first, please read the letter he wrote for you. I looked down at it. My husband's handwriting, his words waiting for me. Words he had written knowing he would not be here when I read them. My throat tightened. I held the envelope gently, afraid it might fall apart under my trembling fingers. Emily whispered, Mom, are you okay? I nodded, but I was not okay. I felt confusion, fear, sadness, hope, and something else, something I had not felt in a long time. Strength, quiet strength, the kind that rises slowly, like dawn. Thomas stood up. I'll give you a moment with the letter. When you're ready, I can explain everything else. He stepped outside to wait on the porch. The room fell silent. I sat there, the letter in my hands, the weight of unspoken truths surrounding me. Emily stared at me with wide, unsure eyes. Ryan paced behind the sofa, restless. They were waiting to hear what my husband had written, waiting to learn what was hidden, waiting to see what would happen next. But this moment was not for them. It was for me, only me. I slid my finger under the flap and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, old, neatly folded, with Daniel's familiar calm handwriting spread across it. I took a deep breath and began to read.
My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, it means a year has passed since I left you. I'm sorry. I wish I could sit beside you and explain everything in person, but life does not follow our wishes, even when our hearts try their best to hold on. There is something I never told you, not because I wanted to keep secrets from you, but because I wanted to protect you from a burden I feared would bring you worry. Before we married, I made some investments. Over the years, they grew, more than I expected, more than I knew how to handle. But money, my love, is not something you ever cared for. You wanted peace, home, warmth, and I feared that if you knew about these funds, you would think differently of our simple life. You always said we had enough. You made our small home feel full. You never asked for more, and that is why I loved you the way I did, deeply, quietly, and with all my heart. But as I grew older, I worried. I watched your hands grow tired. I heard you cry quietly some nights when you thought I was asleep. I saw how you lived your life giving, giving, and giving, and never asking for anything in return. So I decided to save these things for you, to give you a future where you would never struggle, a future where you could choose where to live, what to do, and how to live the rest of your life with dignity, comfort, and freedom. I only ask you for one thing, Sarah, one thing I never asked you for while I was alive. Live for yourself now. Do not remain in any place where you feel unwanted. Do not shrink yourself for anyone. Do not let your kindness be treated as weakness. You deserve safety. You deserve respect.
You deserve peace. I love you, always. Daniel. I finished reading the letter, but I did not move. The room felt still. My breathing felt slow. Emily had tears in her eyes. Ryan stood frozen in place. I folded the letter gently and placed it in my lap. My heart felt heavy and light at the same time. Daniel knew. He somehow knew that one day I might feel like a burden. He knew I might shrink myself for others. He knew me better than I knew myself. And he had prepared something for me. Not just money, not just properties. A choice. A chance to stand again. A way to live without fear. Emily whispered, "Mom, Dad wrote all that for you?" I nodded. Ryan swallowed hard. "So, what does this mean exactly?" I looked at him calmly. "For the first time in a long time," I said gently, "I have options." Ryan stepped back. Emily covered her mouth. And inside me, something shifted. A quiet strength began to rise. The kind of strength my husband wanted for me. The kind of strength I had forgotten I owned. And that strength would soon reveal truths none of us were prepared for. I sat there holding Daniel's letter for a long moment. A soft stillness filled the room, the kind of stillness that settles only when truth finally rises to the surface. The sun had climbed a little higher by then, letting warm light spill gently across the floor. It felt almost symbolic. For the first time in months, perhaps even years, something warm touched my heart. I had been living small, breathing small, moving small, trying not to disturb anyone. But Daniel, even after leaving this world, he had somehow found a way to reach me. His words felt like a hand on my shoulder, a whisper saying, "Stand up, Sarah. You are allowed." I ran my fingers over the ink one more time and folded the letter neatly. Emily stood up from her chair. She looked troubled and guilty and overwhelmed all at once. "Mom," she whispered, "I didn't know Dad had written you something like that. I didn't know he had all those things saved. Why didn't he tell us?" Her voice cracked a little. I looked at her gently. "Your father had a habit of protecting people in quiet ways," I said softly, "even when they didn't ask for it." Ryan let out a long breath, almost impatient. "So now what? Is all that money hers?" I glanced at him slowly. His eyes gave something away, something he tried to hide. It wasn't anger. It was fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing comfort. Fear of whatever hold he believed he had on the situation. Thomas stepped back inside the house, having given us enough privacy. His calm presence eased the tension. "Mrs. Sarah, I know this is a lot to take in. When you're ready, I can go over the documents with you. We don't have to do it all today." I nodded. "Thank you. Let me just breathe for a moment." Thomas offered a respectful nod and waited quietly. Emily sank back into her chair, leaning forward with her elbows on her knees. She spoke so softly that at first I wasn't sure if she was talking to me or to herself. I should have checked the mail more. I should have noticed something. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, in a way she hadn't in a long time. "Mom, did you ever feel like we didn't want you here?" I lowered my gaze. Silence answered for me. Emily's face fell. Her voice trembled. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't see it happening. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know I was losing both of you at the same time, you and Ryan." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I thought having you close would give me peace, but instead I let everything fall apart. I let him get frustrated. I let you feel alone. I let everything slip away from me." I reached out my hand and gently touched hers. "You didn't let anything slip," I said softly. "Life is heavy sometimes. People change. Silence grows between us without us even knowing." But she shook her head. "No, Mom, you were trying so hard. I saw you. You were tiptoeing around the house, eating alone, staying in your room. I thought it was just your way of coping with Dad being gone." My chest tightened. She had noticed. She had seen everything, and still, nothing changed. Ryan cleared his throat loudly. "I think everyone is overreacting," he said. "We never said she wasn't welcome. We just needed more space. And she never said she felt uncomfortable." I looked at him with a softness I'd learned over many years, a softness that didn't accuse but didn't hide truth either. "You didn't need words," I said. "Sometimes the way someone walks past you, the way they exhale, the way they speak, the way they look away, tells you everything." His jaw tightened. "You're misinterpreting things," he said. Thomas, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Mr. Ryan, emotions aside, your mother-in-law has legal rights to certain matters. This conversation is not about interpretation." Ryan shot him an irritated look. "Stayed out of our family issues." Thomas didn't react. He simply nodded politely. "As you wish. My role is only legal, but I will speak privately with Mrs. Sarah whenever she requests." Ryan turned to me. "Sarah, you're not seriously thinking of moving out or doing something drastic, right? We've been supporting you for over a year." Supporting me. The words stung more than he hoped. I had cooked for them, cleaned for them, stayed out of their way, shrunk myself into silence, but somehow, in his mind, they had been supporting me. I inhaled slowly, gently, deeply. "Ryan," I said, in the calmest tone I could manage, "I appreciate everything you and Emily did for me after Daniel passed, truly, but I never wanted to be a burden, and I won't be one now." His shoulders stiffened. "So you're leaving?" Emily gasped. "Ryan!" But he lifted his hands defensively. "I just want to know what's happening. Everything changed in one morning." I looked at the letter again. Everything didn't change this morning. It changed a long time ago. This morning only revealed it. I turned to Thomas. "May I ask you something privately?" He nodded. "Of course." I stood up slowly, folding the letter carefully. My legs felt steady, steadier than they had felt in months. The quiet strength inside me was no longer a faint whisper. It was growing, standing taller, holding me up. Before leaving the room, I turned toward Emily and Ryan. "We'll talk later," I said softly, "but for now, I need to understand what Daniel left for me." Emily nodded, eyes teary. Ryan looked frustrated, but stayed silent. I walked with Thomas toward the small sitting area near the back of the house. It was a place where Daniel and I once sat during visits, sipping tea, laughing at old memories. It felt right to sit there again. We sat down. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in thin, golden lines. Thomas opened the folder on his lap. "There is something more, Mrs. Sarah," he said gently. "Something your husband asked me to explain personally, not through any letter." My heart skipped. "More?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "Yes, the properties and investments are part of it, but the real secret isn't in the money." I held my breath without meaning to. Thomas continued. "Your husband suspected that you might be treated differently after his passing. He worried that your kindness, your nature, would make you tolerate disrespect to avoid causing trouble." My eyes filled. He knew me that well. Even in death, he understood my silence better than anyone living did. Thomas's voice softened. So he created a secondary trust, one that activates only under specific conditions. What conditions? I whispered. He took out another document, one sealed and marked with a red stamp. Conditions that protect you from anyone who mistreats you. I stared at the seal. I don't understand. Thomas folded his hands respectfully. Your husband set a rule. If at any point you felt unsafe, unwanted, or pressured to leave a living arrangement, the trust would release full ownership of all assets directly to you, bypassing any potential interference. I blinked slowly. Ryan's reaction earlier suddenly made sense. The missing letters made sense. The tension made sense. Daniel, he had protected me in ways I never realized. My voice trembled. But how could he know? Thomas smiled softly. Some people understand their loved ones better than the world ever gives them credit for. A warm ache filled my chest. He slid another document toward me. Your signature here confirms that you received the letters now, regardless of when they were delivered, and activates the trust fully. I stared at it. My fingers hovered over the page, not out of hunger, not out of greed, but out of realization. Daniel trusted me to choose the life I deserved. I finally whispered, I want to read everything carefully first. Thomas nodded, almost relieved. Good, that is wise. There is no rush.
Emily approached quietly from behind the hallway, her voice trembling. Mom, may I talk to you? I nodded. She sat beside me, hands shaking. I didn't know about the letters, she whispered. I swear I didn't know. I would never hide something from you intentionally, but I wasn't checking the mail regularly. Ryan usually got it first. There it was, the truth, the missing letters, the cold looks, the sighs, the growing distance. Not all of it was her fault. Not all of it was his either. But silence between two people can build walls higher than anger ever could. I held her hand. She held mine tighter. I'm sorry, Mom, she cried. I let you down. I didn't protect you. I didn't even notice you were suffering. I stroked her hand gently. We all lose ourselves sometimes, I said softly. It happens quietly, one day at a time, until we don't recognize the distance. She leaned her head onto my shoulder. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You won't, I said, and I meant it. Whatever happened next, however life shifted, I would not abandon my daughter, but I also would not disappear anymore. When Emily stepped out to take a call, Ryan entered the sitting area. He stood with his back straight, but his eyes were uneasy. Sarah, he said, trying to sound calm, I think we all got off on the wrong foot today. I didn't answer. He swallowed. I didn't mean for things to get this bad. I was stressed. Work has been difficult. Money has been tight. And I guess I didn't know how to handle having someone else in the house. His words were shallow. Not cruel, not warm, just shallow. Why didn't you talk to me? I asked, softly. He ran his hand through his hair. It was easier to ignore it. Ignore me. The words sank deeper than he intended. And he hesitated. I didn't think you had anywhere else to go. There, finally, the truth beneath everything. He thought I had nowhere to go, no options, no power, no protection. Thomas looked up from his folder but stayed respectfully silent. Ryan, I said gently, do you realize how that sounds? He closed his eyes briefly. I know, I'm sorry, but his apology wasn't for me. It was for himself, for the fear he now felt, for the loss of control,
for the realization that the person he dismissed quietly had resources far beyond what he imagined. But I did not want revenge. I did not want to punish him. I did not want to win. I only wanted peace.
Thomas stood up. Mrs. Sarah, you can take time to decide your next steps. You may stay here or you may choose to live elsewhere. Whatever you choose, you have full independence to decide. Ryan opened his mouth. Emily walked back in. I looked at both of them, and in that moment, clarity washed over me. I knew that Daniel did not leave me wealth so I could control anyone. He left it so I could free myself, free from guilt, free from shrinking, free from fear. But leaving didn't feel right, not immediately. I wanted to leave gently, slowly, calmly, the same way I lived. I inhaled deeply, looked at both of them, and said softly, I'm not making any decisions today. I need a moment to understand everything, to breathe, to let my heart settle. We'll talk after I've read all the documents. Emily nodded quickly. Ryan swallowed. Thomas smiled. And for the first time, the room felt balanced again. Not peaceful, not healed, but balanced. A beginning, a shift, a quiet turning of the page. The man stood in my kitchen doorway like he had been there before. He carried a small folder in his hands, and his eyes kept moving around the room as if he was remembering something. I sat down slowly because my legs felt weak. He did not sit until I nodded. For a moment, we simply listened to the clock on the wall ticking. Then he spoke. Auntie, he said gently, before I tell you anything, I want you to know that your son-in-law is not as strong as he pretends. That sentence made my heart stop for a second. I did not know what he meant, but something inside me knew it was serious. What do you mean? I asked softly. He took a deep breath. I know him, not recently, but years ago, before he married your daughter. I was surprised. I turned my head slowly, watching his face. He continued, he is not a bad man, but he is a man who carries heavy things inside him, things he never shared with anyone. I remember folding my hands together. It was something I always did when I felt nervous or uncertain. The man noticed, and he lowered his voice even more. He didn't tell you why he acted the way he did last night, he said. He didn't tell you why he pushed you out so suddenly. He didn't tell you the truth. I swallowed, feeling a small pain rise in my chest. He said he was tired, I whispered. He said I was disturbing his silence. The man shook his head slowly. No, Auntie, that is not the real reason. He opened the folder he was holding. There were papers inside, old and yellow on the edges, like they had been carried for a long time. He placed the first one in front of me. I stared at it. I did not understand it at first. It was a medical report. A name was written at the top, my son-in-law's name. My fingers froze. Auntie, the man said gently, he has been sick for a long time. He never told anyone. He kept it inside, trying to live normally, trying to be strong. He thought silence would protect everyone. For a moment, I felt the entire house grow silent, almost too silent. I closed my eyes because I needed to breathe. He is sick? I whispered. Why didn't he tell us? Why didn't he tell my daughter? The man looked down. Because he was scared. He thought he would become a burden. He thought people would look at him differently. He thought he would lose respect. Those words, they hit me in a place I did not expect. All the times he had acted distant, all the times he kept quiet at dinner, all the times he avoided long conversations,
Every moment suddenly made sense. I felt tears forming, but I kept them inside, just like he had kept his pain. My throat tightened. He didn't push you out because he disliked you. He pushed you out because he was having a moment of fear. He felt he would break in front of you. He didn't want anyone to see him weak. I put my hand over my mouth. A small sound escaped me. Not a cry, just a quiet ache. The man waited. He gave me time. He let me breathe. When I finally lifted my head, I felt older, but also softer. "Why did you come?" I asked him, wiping a tear with my thumb. He took out another paper. "Auntie, he asked me to deliver this only when the situation reached a point he could not control anymore." I stared at the sealed envelope he placed on the table. My son-in-law's handwriting. My heart almost broke right there. "He told me," the visitor continued, "that if he ever hurt you, even unintentionally, if he ever showed you his fear in the wrong way, I should come to you, because he said you're the only person who never judged him. He said you bring peace into the house, even when others don't see it." That moment took all the strength I had left. I held the envelope, feeling its weight, not the paper, but the emotions inside it. The man stood up quietly. "I've said what I needed to say," he whispered. "He needs compassion right now, more than anything." I watched him walk toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back and said, "You're the only one who can hold this family together. He knows that. That is why he trusted you." And then he was gone. The door closed softly, but inside me, something opened. I sat with the envelope for a long time. I did not rush to read it. I simply held it, letting its meaning sink deep into my heart. I thought of him, the man who was proud, quiet, and sometimes difficult. The man who turned off the TV last night with anger, but perhaps beneath that anger was fear, pain, and a loneliness he could never speak out loud. The house felt fuller now, not with noise, but with understanding. Something inside me whispered, "This is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of the truth." And I knew the next step would change everything.
I sat alone for a long time after the visitor left. The envelope rested on my lap, warm from my hands. I kept tracing my finger along its edge, feeling the slight lift of the glue line, the curve of his handwriting, the careful way he had written my name. There was something tender about it, something that made my heart ache with a feeling I could not name. Finally, I stood up. The house felt calm again, almost still. The morning light had moved slowly across the floor, touching the furniture gently, the way time touches memories. I walked to my room, closed the door softly behind me, and sat on the edge of the bed. Only then did I open the envelope. The paper inside was folded twice. When I unfolded it, the handwriting made me pause. It was shaky in some places, steady in others, like a man trying to be brave while his hands trembled. I began reading. "Auntie," it started, "I am sorry for what I said and what I did. I know I hurt you. I know I pushed you away, but I hope one day you will understand why." My chest tightened. Every word felt like a step into his hidden world. "I have been sick for a long time. I did not want anyone to know. I did not want to trouble my wife or worry you. I wanted to stay strong. I wanted to be the man my family believed I was." There was a small strike-through where he had corrected a single letter. It felt human. It felt real. But last night I reached a point where my fear was bigger than my strength. I felt a wave inside me, something I could not control. I said things I did not mean. I acted in a way that I will regret forever. I touched the words gently, as if touching a wound he had tried to hide. I have always given me peace, Auntie, more than you know. When you sit in the living room, the house feels safe. When you speak softly, things feel calm. Maybe that is why I pushed you away, because I was scared you would see me break. I did not want you to see me like that. My tears fell slowly, one after another, marking the corner of the page. I do not know how much time I have or how bad this illness will get, but if one day I cannot speak for myself, please remind my wife that I loved her, and remind yourself that I respected you more than I ever said out loud. The letter ended with a small line at the bottom. Thank you for being the only steady thing in my life. I held the paper close to my chest. My breath trembled. I whispered his name softly, like a prayer. For a long time I just sat there, not crying loudly, not shaking, just letting the truth settle inside me like warm rain soaking into dry earth. After some time, I folded the letter carefully, placed it back into the envelope, and held it between my palms. A quiet strength filled me, not anger, not sadness, something deeper, something that felt like understanding. I knew what I had to do. I wiped my eyes, stood up, and walked out of the room. My daughter was sitting at the dining table, scrolling through her phone, unaware of everything that had happened that morning. She looked up when she saw me. Her eyes searched my face. "Are you okay?" she asked. I sat down slowly. "Yes," I said softly. "I am." She stared for a moment, maybe sensing something had changed, but she didn't push. She just waited. I placed the envelope on the table between us. "What is this?" she asked. "It is something you need to read, and something you need to know." Her fingers touched the paper. She looked confused, concerned. Before she opened it, I whispered, "Your husband is fighting something quietly, something he has carried alone for too long." She froze. Her eyes widened slightly. Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling a little. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Read the letter," I said gently, "and then we will talk." Her eyes filled with tears even before she began. As she read, I watched her face change from confusion to shock to pain to a kind of fragile understanding. When she finished, she pressed the letter to her forehead and cried softly, not loudly, not desperately, just the way a heart cries when it realizes it has been blind to someone else's suffering. I moved my chair closer and wrapped my arms around her. She leaned into me the way she used to when she was a little girl. "Mama," she whispered, "how did we not see it?" "Sometimes," I said quietly, "people hide their pain because they love us, and sometimes we do not see because we think they are stronger than they really are." We sat there together, holding each other, sharing the weight of a truth that had arrived like a quiet visitor. After some time, I folded the letter carefully, placed it back into the envelope, and held it between my palms. A quiet strength filled me, not anger, not sadness, something deeper, something that felt like understanding. I knew what I had to do. I wiped my eyes, stood up, and walked out of the room. My daughter was sitting at the dining table, scrolling through her phone, unaware of everything that had happened that morning. She looked up when she saw me. Her eyes searched my face. "Are you okay?" she asked. I sat down slowly. "Yes," I said softly, "I am." She stared for a moment,
maybe sensing something had changed, but she didn't push. She just waited. I placed the envelope on the table between us. "What is this?" she asked. "It is something you need to read, and something you need to know." Her fingers touched the paper. She looked confused, concerned. Before she opened it, I whispered, "Your husband is fighting something quietly, something he has carried alone for too long." She froze. Her eyes widened slightly. Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling a little. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Read the letter," I said gently, "and then we will talk." Her eyes filled with tears even before she began. As she read, I watched her face change from confusion to shock to pain to a kind of fragile understanding. When she finished, she pressed the letter to her forehead and cried softly, not loudly, not desperately, just the way a heart cries when it realizes it has been blind to someone else's suffering. I moved my chair closer and wrapped my arms around her. She leaned into me the way she used to when she was a little girl. "Mama," she whispered, "how did we not see it?" "Sometimes," I said quietly, "people hide their pain because they love us, and sometimes we do not see because we think they are stronger than they really are." We sat there together, holding each other, sharing the weight of a truth that had arrived like a quiet visitor. After some time, I folded the letter carefully, placed it back into the envelope, and held it between my palms. A quiet strength filled me, not anger, not sadness, something deeper, something that felt like understanding. I knew what I had to do. I wiped my eyes, stood up, and walked out of the room. My daughter was sitting at the dining table, scrolling through her phone, unaware of everything that had happened that morning. She looked up when she saw me. Her eyes searched my face. "Are you okay?" she asked. I sat down slowly. "Yes," I said softly, "I am." She stared for a moment, maybe sensing something had changed, but she didn't push. She just waited. I placed the envelope on the table between us. "What is this?" she asked. "It is something you need to read, and something you need to know." Her fingers touched the paper. She looked confused, concerned. Before she opened it, I whispered, "Your husband is fighting something quietly, something he has carried alone for too long." She froze. Her eyes widened slightly. Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling a little. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Read the letter," I said gently, "and then we will talk." Her eyes filled with tears even before she began. As she read, I watched her face change from confusion to shock to pain to a kind of fragile understanding. When she finished, she pressed the letter to her forehead and cried softly, not loudly, not desperately, just the way a heart cries.
The hospital room was quiet when we arrived, the kind of quiet that feels gentle, not frightening. A nurse adjusted a machine, nodded at us kindly, and stepped out, leaving the small space filled with soft beeping and the steady rhythm of breathing. My son-in-law lay there, eyes closed, his face pale but peaceful. For the first time, I saw not a man who had pushed me away, but a man who had been fighting a silent battle, all alone. My daughter went to him first. She held his hand, her fingers trembling. He opened his eyes slowly, and when he saw her, a tiny smile appeared, tired but real. "I'm here," she whispered. "I know everything now." He looked confused for a moment, then his eyes moved past her and found me standing quietly near the door. Something in his face changed. Relief, shame, gratitude, all mixed together. I walked toward him slowly, my steps soft, my heart steady. When I reached the side of his bed, he tried to speak, but the words came out weak and broken. "Auntie, I'm sorry." I shook my head gently and placed my hand on his arm. "No," I whispered, "you were carrying too much alone." He closed his eyes, as if my words took weight off his chest. My daughter leaned her head against his shoulder, tears slipping down quietly. "We're here," she said. "You don't have to hide anymore." For a long time, none of us spoke. We simply held the silence together, an honest silence this time, not the cold, sharp silence of misunderstandings, a silence that healed instead of hurt. Later that evening, after the doctor explained everything to us in calm, simple words, we sat in the waiting area, 3 people connected in a new way, not through perfection, not through pride, but through truth. My daughter leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she did when she was small. "Mama," she said softly, "I will take care of him. I don't want him to face anything alone again." I touched her hand and nodded. "And I will take care of both of you. This is our family. We don't forget each other in difficult times." As I said those words, I felt something shift inside me. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just a quiet settling, like a tired heart finally finding a resting place. That night, when we returned home, I walked into the living room and saw the TV remote resting on the table. For a moment, I picked it up. I remembered the night he turned off the TV. I remembered the coldness in his voice, the sharpness in his words.
But now I also remembered something else. The fear underneath. The sickness he had hidden. The letter he had written with shaking hands. The trust he had placed in me without ever saying it aloud. I placed the remote back down gently. Sometimes life gives us moments that feel like endings, but they are really beginnings disguised in pain. The next morning, the man who had visited me returned briefly. He stood at the gate, nodded once, and said, "He needed you. I'm glad you were there." And just like the first time, he left quietly, without expecting anything in return. People like him appear only when needed, silent bridges between the truth and the people meant to receive it. As days passed, my son-in-law began recovering slowly. The house felt different, softer, more honest, more connected. We spoke more, we listened more, we understood more. One evening, while we all sat together at the dining table, he looked at me and said, "Auntie, thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. "I never saw you as someone to give up on." His eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, he looked like a man at peace.